All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Split, a young adult book review podcast for readers and writers. I'm Bryan Cohen, of author of Ted Saves the World series, and Robert Scanlon is over there, and I totally forgot the name of your series off the top of my head, so...
Thank you for that request for a plug. It's called The Dreamer Chronicles. Begins with Serena's Nightmare, which is currently free on Kindle, and I've just released Moon Zero, third book in the series, which is getting some great responses I'm really happy about. So there you go.
Awesome.
Thank you, Bryan.
Yeah, of course. I would have plugged you myself if I would have been more prepared. So today we're going to be talking about the book Divergent, big worldwide hit. There's a movie out about it. The teaser for its sequel, Insurgent, just came out today, which I watched and didn't make any sense, unsurprisingly. I think you can see the direction we're going in. Divergent by Veronica Roth. We both have our opinions on this book. First, I'm going to inform our listeners what this book is about. Divergent centers around a 16-year-old girl named Beatrice, who lives in a dystopian world where everyone is divided into one of 5 factions. And when she gets caught in the middle of a faction power grab, she learns that she bridges the gap between factions. Things get hairy for her and the people that she loves. So I had done probably things that we should not do on this show, and that is I watched the movie before I read the book, and I watched the video, everything that's wrong with this movie in 15 minutes, Cinema Sins. So I had everything pointed out to me about the world of the book and the movie that didn't make sense automatically. And so I was kind of ready to beat this book up from the beginning. There's things to like about this book, though, and maybe we should touch on that a little bit first. What are some things you liked about this book, Robert?
Yeah, maybe can I pick up on what you were saying there, because it's interesting we arrived at similar conclusions, which the listeners will hear. I was super excited to read this because I'd seen it getting great acclaim as some new science fiction by a young new author, and I love science fiction. I've read it since I was 8, and it's my favorite genre. So, I'm really looking forward to this. I enjoyed the Hunger Games. I'm looking for more, and so I didn't have any spoilers whatsoever. I read nothing, knew nothing about it. I deliberately kept myself away from it, and then when it came in at the library, I devoured it and was disappointed. But as you say, it's been a worldwide hit. And so why is that? And for me, I think the positive part of the book is that probably young people, teenagers especially, heavily identify with Triss and the difficult choices that she makes. She's forced into a faction that is very subdued and diplomatic and demure, and so she gets the chance to choose and then discovers there might be something different about her, and who as a teenager doesn't want to discover that, like Ted and his superpowers. You just who wouldn't want to find out that there's something buried in there that you can suddenly take full advantage of that you never knew was there. So for me, I think that's really the attraction of the premise.
Yeah, and there's action, there's romance, there's Hunger Games-esque challenges to overcome, but we both agree that all those factors, while good on their own, and there are good scenes in this book, I think, they don't necessarily gel together that well. I think the present tense is a little tough for me. I haven't read too many books in the present tense. This one's in present tense, and I don't know if that's supposed to add more immediacy or what, but that's a little off. The story world's a little funky. What do you think about this story world of Divergent? What do you think about this society that came to be?
It's when I was watching the movie, which I watched after having read the book, sometime actually after having read the book, And I was struck by the fact that even watching the movie where they have to make things plausible, I just kept asking myself, why? Why do they? She's 16 and they have to go into this big stadium and kind of, choose these factions. And could somebody explain that to me, please? So I think it's hard to suspend disbelief. It really is. And that's one of the key things for any good story. What gets you through, as you say, is the action. And it's a pretty reasonable page turner. I mean, it's an easy book to read, and I guess that's probably another positive from it. The present tense, if you think about it, Bryan, the Hunger Games is all in present tense as well, but it's much less noticeable because the prose, I think, is very rich. Yeah. And I think Veronica Roth is still finding her voice. And to me, that shows in present tense. Personally, I think as an author, present tense is the hardest one to write.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't offer things up that you can in third person, and you've got no choice of other points of view unless you write lots of present tenses in one book, which is doable. The I Am Number 4 series has exactly that, and that kind of works, but they have to use different fonts to indicate who's talking in the next chapter. And so, I think it's a really challenging style, and for me, it didn't work in Divergent, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we're pretty much on the same page with this. As a writer, I think there's actually a lot to be encouraged by, because it doesn't. You and I, we're just starting out in this review game, and maybe we'll be doing it for a while. I hope that we are doing it for a while, but what we say truly does not matter. What matters is what the readers read. And if you can find a hook, and by hook we mean something interesting enough that sets your book apart that readers enjoy. If you find a hook that the world connects with, then, I mean, look at what Divergent did. 4 movies. They're turning those 3 books into 4 movies. Got huge movie stars, Shailene Woodley, and she's blowing up partly because of this movie. It's big, and that is encouraging for writers, because we all want to have that, but when we don't have a strong enough hook and it's not well written enough, it's never going to reach those heights. So it doesn't have to be the best book ever. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't have to be the best book ever.
Exactly. And in fact, I think we'd have to say there's no such thing as the perfect book. And even the classics, you can go onto Amazon and read 1-star reviews, people who didn't like them. So, I have to admit, I would have given it 2 stars. And look, I'm really pleased for a young author that she's achieved such fantastic success. And it's great to see a new series lifting off, and I really hope she finds a better voice, because one of the things that I loved was that there was an interesting new premise, and it is a dystopian world, and who knows where it will go from there. But you're quite right. We can't get caught up on perfectionism or even author jealousy.
No, I'm happy for her too, of course.
Absolutely.
So another thing to keep in mind, I thought that while it's tough to push through the world, I understand the characters' motivations. What the characters are doing in this book makes sense. And that, I think, is another thing people identify with. Peter is obviously a villain, and Triss obviously is conflicted. And while there's some mystery to it, he wants to help Triss and loves her and all of that. And Eric is a bad guy too. I mean, you're not really seeing, maybe you're not seeing too many arcs, but you are seeing characters that make sense. And I think a world that doesn't make sense doesn't matter as much as honest characters, at least in this book, at least as far as people liking it worldwide.
Indeed. I mean, explain to me, Bryan, the trains.
I live in Chicago and I didn't understand the trains. Who's operating these trains? Are they running on their own? Where is this city limits that they're going out to? There's maybe something got raised and there's grass And does it like loop around and
Why don't they stop?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question because
Anyway.
yeah, the trains just being and I liked seeing a book that was set in Chicago, even if it was a little wacky, but yeah, definitely.
Well, actually, I suppose that's a good point. The setting is interesting, even if we see plot holes within. The setting is certainly interesting.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other positives, I guess, about the book is the setting. So should we move into our takeaways, Bryan?
Yeah, I would love to. I'll give one, then you give one, then I'll give another. Does that sound okay? All right.
That sounds really good to me.
Okay, cool. So I think that one takeaway from this is you should consider if your story world makes sense when you're putting it together. It always helps to run it by some friends, fellow writers, beta readers, or people who read earlier drafts of your book to help you to find the holes. Find the holes early, and then you'll. I mean, from beta readers have helped me make changes in my story world with Ted Saves the World that I wouldn't have even thought of. So sometimes it helps to pass it along to someone else.
Indeed, I think it's a really good point. I had the same thing happen to my first book. Somebody suggested something that then ended up being some of the very seeds for books 2 and book 3, and I would never have thought of it. So yeah, absolutely get other input. My takeaway is one for both readers and writers, which is have a think about these so-called factions. If you had to put yourself in a faction, what faction would you put yourself in, and why? And would there be any conflict? Would there really be another faction that you would kind of rather be in? And what would your friends say? What factions would they go in, and what would they say, more importantly, what faction should you be in?
Yeah, good question, definitely. And when you're writing, these are the questions to ask yourself. The put yourself in the world, because then you'll it's another way to expose some of these holes or whatnot. So my last takeaway: make sure you know how readers are going to react to your style and your tense, particularly the tense in this case, because some readers are turned off by a certain tense. I know that my wife was reading a John Green book, and it actually switched between past and present a little bit, and it jarred her enough for her to tell me about it. And that's something to think about when you're writing your book, because you are writing it, and then it's someone else's. It's hopefully hundreds of thousands of someone else's reading it, so you have to think about how they're going to react to that style.
Great tip, Bryan.
Thank you, Robert. So I feel like because you have a deeper voice than me and I have a higher voice, I'm just like, yes, sir. That's great.
My voice is not that deep.
It's deeper than mine.
Much deeper, though, if you'd like me to.
Okay. That's too deep for our listeners. Too deep.
It is.
So I have a prompt of the week for Divergent. If you could divide our present world into 5 factions, what traits would they represent and why? Feel free to write a response to this in the comments on YouTube, or when we get our website up and running, which by the time we post this, it probably will be. You can post it in a comment, or just send it to us in an email. When we start getting some of these rolling in, maybe we'll share some of them on the show, and that'll be another fun thing for people to tune into. So what do you think of the prompt? Any other last thoughts?
No other last thoughts, but I'd love to hear somebody writing with a short story with those 5 factions they've chosen. One day, Bryan, one day.
One day. We're going to have listeners and everything. It's going to be great. People will wear our T-shirts with our cool logo. Well, great. That was awesome. Thank you guys for listening and watching The Split. We're going to be around every week for another book in the young adult genre. I'm Bryan Cohen, that's Robert Scanlon, and we hope to chat with you guys soon. Thanks for listening.
Thanks and bye.
Thank you guys for watching. Somewhere on this page is a subscribe button to the Split channel. We do reviews every week. We would love it if you followed us every single week. Isn't that right, Robert?
That's exactly right. Follow us now. Hit the subscribe button.
Do it.